Hello, and welcome to episode 31 of the Drink and Draw Social Hour with Gary Duffner, me, Alex Morrissey, and this week our special guest is the one and only Patty Hawkins.
Hey, Drink and Draw fans, how you doing?
Hey!
Long-time listener, first-time guest.
That's right.
What you got there?
I got some kombucha.
Oh,
What the heck is that?
what is kombucha?
It's a probiotic fermentation, and it may have some alcohol.
Okay.
It does have a sort of a.
It does have a kick.
Did you see? Were you going to say deleterious? Because I was going to say deleterious.
It's kind of got like a vinegary thing going on, but it's supposed to be healthy for you. I
Is
don't
that a
know.
thing now? People drink vinegar stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, like the cider vinegar. You take a tablespoon a day, and it's supposed to help clean you out.
it does.
And at our age, it makes you regular.
So I'm getting all this protest earlier today about kale from you, Gary, and you're drinking kombucha.
I
And,
just don't like kale.
vinegar.
I like all the other veggies.
you know, when you come over for dinner one time, I will make
Yes.
a kale salad that you will be.
No,
Yes.
I'm not coming.
Well,
Not coming.
I'll make mac and cheese as well.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm there.
Kale's okay.
And kombucha.
Out in California, everything's made with arugula.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, everything is arugula salad, arugula this, arugula that. I'm like,
Arugula
do you have
house
just
siding,
plain romaine?
plain.
Some people like aruga.
romaine.
Aruga.
I like
Aruga.
Plain romaine. So Pat,
Oh.
welcome.
Thank
Hey, welcome.
How you doing, buddy?
you. I am well.
Where have you been recently, Pat?
I just came back from Chicago. I hosted several program offerings at C2E2, and I emceed the very first cosplay masquerade
Ooh.
at C2E2. And the difference between that, a cosplay masquerade is a costume contest where all the contestants actually perform some type of performance expression. So sometimes they may go on out for 60 seconds to a dance. I'm going to do some dubstep. You get 60 seconds if you're one person. If you're a group, you get about 3 minutes. So it's sometimes you see some just really amazing things, and then sometimes just people sort of walk off and they sort of bow, and it's okay. So it's few and far between. It was for a first time. It was one of the better ones I have seen. Some other times there's an unofficial derogatory term, masquerade. Sometimes it's referred to as a gong show without the gong.
Okay. Right.
And that's that. And but by the same token, that's also holding it to a measure of,
Of entertainment.
yeah. Well, you see some community stuff as it is, and really the important thing about it is it's not supposed to be an expo of the very, very best Chicago, whatever. It's supposed to just give people an opportunity to go on out and have a moment in the limelight. It's just whatever it is. It's like people who enter a marathon and come in absolute dead last. Just the fact that they went through it all is worthy of enough praise.
No doubt. I mean, I yeah, sure. I think anybody who goes through anything deserves it. The person who has the lowest GPA still gets a diploma at the end of school. So
yeah, so they and Reed Pop, the owners of C2E2, and they also do New York Comic Con, Emerald City, a whole bunch, and they inherited the concept when they bought out the Miami SuperCon show, and they also inherited me. But I was like baked in the cake, and me and several other people that have been regulars, and so they gave me a tryout, and so far they seem to be enjoying what I do, because one of the things I've done over the years is I've tried to add oh my God, you know what I like.
I know what you like, baby.
That is really nice. That's a really good likeness of him too.
Hopefully it'll only get worse.
If everyone does not know, this is Patrick McGowan as the prisoner, and his role is number 6, the title character.
Yes.
And is the pinnacle on my Apex TV thing.
It is. I
It
know,
starts- it
I know
starts
your
at the
sweet
prisoner.
spot. I know your sweet spot.
What's that? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it starts as
Patty.
the prisoner, and then it goes to 2 tiers underneath that, which would be Doctor Who and Star Trek, and then underneath that you got like 4, and then 8. You know, it goes from there. So
Yeah, sure.
I've actually got some artwork I can show you guys. It's not mine, but
Ooh.
some purchase stuff. But we can do that a little later.
Thanks.
Alright.
What our most loyal watcher, Sean MacArthur, says, "Hey guys, what's going on?" So we're
Yo, what's up, Sean?
Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Shaolin is in the house, so
So I've been very lucky to be given further opportunities with the 3 pop shows, and
yeah.
one thing that I think I figured it out this weekend. By virtue of my career, I've been lucky enough to finally find something that takes use of all the useless information that's accumulated in my brain over the decades. Yes, about every facet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm also a professional actor in Orlando, so as I tell everybody, I speak actor and I speak fan. So a lot of times I've been a cultural translator. There have been some actors. Yeah, so there are many actors I've whispered in their ear. In the comic book, your character does this. That's why he's asking. Oh well, you know what? Yeah, they did give me some comics to read about that, and you know.
So okay, so Patty, that brings us around here. So, we've known you for a long time, and you have always had a relatively encyclopedic knowledge of pop culture, films, animation, television for sure, comic books. I mean, really the whole gamut. And so, where did that all start? How did that happen, man? Like
a lot, just basically like you guys. I mean, well, actually, I can't.
It was a job for me, Pat. It was never a love.
You had to start off with kind of a love. I mean, where it all began really was the same of our generation. And there's 2 things about men our age. I do a talk at conventions called Geeks of a Certain Age.
Okay.
And there's 2 very unifying things about our generation. One, we were the tail end of the VHS TV guide generation. And that basically meant we would run every Tuesday for me, run out to the mailbox, the only time you go into the mailbox, grab the TV guide, and start looking at it for anything that was in the solar system of our interest.
Right.
Yes.
You know, because there was no demand or anything else. So you'd be like, oh, wow, at 4 a.m. Friday night on the late night, they're showing Billy the Kid Meets Dracula.
Right.
And you'd watch it, not because it was good or anything, but just because
it's different.
It was something that was in the greater universe of what you like, and it was total crap, but you'd watch it anyway.
You would watch it.
It's this, and we were the last generation of the Spinner Rack kids.
Mm-hmm.
By the same token, we were also the kids that I call us the direct market generation, where we didn't create the comic book shops. That happened right when we were starting, but we kept them in business. And when we all should have been aging out, theoretically, the comic book shops yanked us back in and kind of made us lifers, whether we liked it or not.
Okay.
Whether it was an interest in art.
When do you say that happened? What was the time that you see that happening? How do you think that they yanked us back in?
First of all, just the ability to go somewhere and they would have everything. It was especially a location that you weren't left to the whims of the spinner racks. If you had a completed story, you'd hoped part 2 would actually be there, or you'd start wheeling around. I was gobsmacked at the notion that there was a store that sold nothing but comics. I was stunned at the concept of back issues. I knew such a thing existed, and I knew they were valuable, but I didn't know that, oh wow, for an extra 50 cents, I could find that issue that I missed from 5 years ago and stuff. And then when DC and Marvel started to realize that there was some gold in the direct market, then they began pushing out the experimental stuff, the Epic and some of the direct market stuff. and they started, it started playing around. They let Frank Miller do Ronin, which for years I've always said, if he had done Dark Knight and then Ronin would be much more well regarded.
I totally agree.
Interesting. Yeah.
I was honestly I loved the Dark Knight, but I think I liked Ronin more. I can say the Dark Knight, because it had Batman and it had Superman and it had all these characters that you sort of already really had this connection with. Blake is in the house. Blake says Ronin is his fave. So, but there was something about Ronin when I was a kid, in high
Blake
school.
sent me dirty messages because he was at the Richmond GalaxyCon while I was in Chicago.
Aha. Well, that explains it. Yeah, I agree with you in that sense. So you were saying about the about the comics, and I think that there was this point that the industry sort of I think it was able to capitalize on what the sort of the titans of the market did in the early 80s, and it gave them some clout to do more. We weren't going anywhere. They maybe it was also the advent of the Crisis on Infinite Earths and the Secret Wars.
There was that. I think talent-wise, it was still the guys getting into it were the guys who really legitimately absolutely wanted to be there.
Yeah.
They didn't fall like Byrne and Simonson and Chaykin, and those guys were the first fanboys of superhero comics or comics in general as a specific form, that they wanted to work in that, as opposed to their predecessors, which were, they were looking for like a plum newspaper strip. That's where the money was.
Sure, right.
Stuff
Or to
like
be
that.
or to be illustrators for agencies.
Yes, comics was something that you fell back into, along with things like, say, professional wrestling, which was big burly guys who couldn't make it in pro football in the 50s and 60s fell into professional wrestling. Now these are first choice professions in many people's eyes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very different. I mean, certainly now it's a very different market than it was.
And there was this definitely in our I call it for direct market generation. There was a very exciting golden age, so to speak. It was a lot of wonderment, a lot of experiment, a lot of guys just doing stuff. A lot of independent companies that weren't predicated on replicating the superhero formula. You had Chaykin on American Flag, Mike Grell on John Sable Freelance, Barron and Rude on Nexus. I mean, this was really, really legitimate stuff that, again, right in the formative years when we were like, we still I think we still like the superhero stuff. We liked what was going on in there. But here was the PG-13 stuff.
Yeah.
That was ready for us. It's like Grimjack was not like a protagonist I'd ever seen before, but he was what I wanted at the time. And he was doing stuff that only Grimjack could do. I did not want Batman to shoot people in the back or Captain America, but I was perfectly fine with Grimjack doing it.
Right.
So there was this wave and this wonderful thing, but stuff too. And I do think it's interesting that during that time, there's so much good stuff, but to most people's perception, it all just boils down to that Moses came down from Mount Sinai at some point in the mid 80s with the Watchmen and the Dark Knight Returns, and then that's kind of it. And those seem to be the mimetic titles that everything is sort of like lopped upon, which I think on a superficial aspect is fine. But I think a lot of people now, and this is another curiosity too, is that we have a younger generation which is unaware of that stuff. Maybe they get exposed to it, and this is crazy. There was a kid who I think it was like in his mid-20s or something, was last minute substitute in a sketch duel, and I took Professor Nelson's class. I'm like, oh god, Professor Nelson.
Oh geez.
Wow.
I was just like, yeah, I could tell you stories about that guy.
Cheers, Nelson.
Yeah,
Cheers
I
to you.
know. I was like, yeah, I went to SVA. Yeah, it was just,
Wow.
and he listed off the names of the guys we knew that are associated with them now. And
But that's,
I was like,
yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I taught a couple classes after the fact. So
nice.
yeah.
So and and on the other side, taking it of the sci-fi, the geek culture thing too. Yeah, we had the rise of Star Trek: The Next Generation. You still had some, and we were also there for 1982, which is considered the greatest movie year ever. You know, you had everything from Star Trek 2, E.T., Poltergeist, Phil's favorite, Sword the Sorcerer, Conan the Barbarian. And that definitely burned a hole into our collective brains. And also, though, much in the same way for like the lasting effect of Dark Knight and Watchmen, it also made people kind of think that everything just sort of starts there and moves forward. I believe J.J. Abrams is a perfect example of this. I don't think J.J. Abrams has really studied film or film history or whatever. I think his awareness kind of started with Star Wars because he's a passionate Star Wars fan, and kind of went from there. And one measure I've always taken of people, not that I've thrown it at them, but just when I'm working with them too, it's like there's a fan, and then there's what I call an interested fan. I for a while I call it enlightened fan, and that was just too pompous. But interested fan, which is okay. Do you like this well enough that you actually were willing to look back from before the point you got on board, as opposed to a type of fan which is like, okay, I'm here now, so everything is cool. And that's not a criticism; it's just an observation. Like right now, we flash ahead. So there was the direct market generation. There was the polybagged generation, the 90s kids, the Image Comics guys, the wizard readers, chromium covers, the chromium age of comics, the double aughts. I call them the Grand Theft Auto generation because that was the rise of video games and their immersion into a narrative that had incredible control, and also doing like particularly R-rated, heavy, nasty stuff. Grand Theft Auto is very much the Clockwork Orange of that generation.
That's a fair assessment.
And then this past decade, the 10s to now, I call it the cinematic generation, because we have an entire cultivated generation of comic book fans who have never read a comic in their life. It's all visual in the films and stuff. And again, that's not a criticism.
No. I don't see that being one either.
By the same token, I've also often said that on our generation, we need to stop being crotchety and like, hey, we need to take mentorship. That's one thing I was saying in geek culture. It's like we should, if we can, try to like share our knowledge as opposed to trying to protect what we feel is like our interests or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a querulous time, because the geek subculture and convention culture was never meant to hold 5 generations all at once. And
well, the Rolling Stones aren't still supposed to be playing.
Yeah, and I always said I never wanted to be one of those proto Neanderthal versions of the neckbeard, who, when I went to my first convention in 1981, and if I used the word sci-fi and they dropped their books in umbrage, because back then you could actually buy books and they'd be all like, it's science fiction. Harlan Ellison says sci-fi sounds like crickets fucking, And what the asteroid did to the dinosaur, Star Wars did to most of those guys.
Yeah, sure.
There's still a few out there in the wild, God bless them, but yeah, they're not.
No, and listen, Star Wars is my awakening.
Very much.
I was a huge Star Trek fan, and still am. But the advent of Star Wars, that that summer of '77 just changed everything for me. I mean, it's no surprise why. And if you said, what's your favorite comic book run? Well, my favorite comic book run is the first 12 issues of Micronauts. And that's it. And, for those of you who know me, that's it. You know, like that answers all of the questions. And Star Wars is responsible for that, because pre-Star Wars, it was Star Trek and Spider-Man and Batman for me.
Star Wars showed us that it could be as good as we imagined it. You know,
or better.
Yeah, or better. Yeah, in the sense that, you know, we read a comic or we read a short story, young adult fiction or whatever. Star Wars really believed, holy crap, this stuff could really be something, as opposed to, say, Logan's Run.
Yes.
Yeah, which was and we could talk about Star Wars too, but to me, Star Wars was like one, and I never realized it at the time, but it would much later. It was just like why did this resonate so much? Because everything was lived in.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't shiny, the silver jumpsuits and people eating food pills and the cleanness
and floating slowly.
It was, it was.
Wait, guys.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, it was.
If they understand that reference.
I believe that in the Star Wars universe, people actually take a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Star Trek, no. According to the
get out of the uniform.
According to the Star Trek plans, there's a bathroom right off to where the camera you never see on the Star Trek bridge. There's supposed to be a toilet there. But
no, I have the blueprints. It's there.
It is there, yeah.
I think they use the 3 shells.
I think when they get the transporter and they go somewhere, the transporter takes the poo and beams it out, all out in space with the tribbles. That's my guess.
That would explain a great deal.
They land refreshed.
That would explain a great deal. Because that makes sense too. Because if you're going into a possibly hostile situation, you don't want to.
Last thing you want to do.
Oh, Captain, maybe excuse for a moment.
Right. Or be tense and upset. You have to negotiate your way out of a situation.
You need a hand with that suit.
But just once.
Can you get my zipper?
Just once, I wanted to see somebody. The door opened, you hear the flushing sound, and be like, "What's the status, ensign?" You know, just fixing the.
Ooh, what's going on in there?
So we've got a couple things here. One, going back to the '80s, Blake really wants us to give Jim Shooter some credit for his work in comics in the '80s.
Jim Shooter inherited a total mess.
Yeah, he turned the ship around, and that's that was not only due to his amazing talents as a writer and an editor, also the energy of a young man. He was the right person for the right job.
Who was already a veteran in the business.
Yeah.
Writing Legion of Superheroes at age 15.
Once again, another one of my all-time favorite books is Legion of Superheroes. I love that book.
What's not to love?
It's great.
Legion was always one of the things I got into later, and I out of all the comic book fandoms, I feel the most sorry for the Legion fans, because they've really, for the past 20 years, they've really gotten the shaft.
Taking it on the chin. Yeah.
DC has just never known what to do with them, and the latest permutation with Bendis has really not made anybody particularly happy, but I'm sure it'll have its fans and whatnot.
Listen, every generation has its thing and has its fans for that thing. I mean, we can't discount the Star Wars prequels, because there are millions and millions of people who love them.
Very much so.
They're not for me. And then I was excited. I saw the first one a bunch of times to convince myself I loved it.
I've never hated the prequels.
No, I don't hate them. I don't love them, but I don't hate them.
Are they great? Are they as good as that first time? No, but Star Wars, that was that first hit to our virgin brains, and that gives that first high that they always say the first one and the rest of them are never as good as it, and that you spend your life like chasing it, and that's what the the prequels were for all intents and purposes. Hell, my favorite of the prequels is the second one, Attack of the Clones, and that's the one like everybody hates. But I'm
I like
like
that one.
Yeah.
I saw Christopher Lee wielding a lightsaber and fighting 2 Jedi and winning.
Great.
What the,
Sure.
what
And
the
that,
fuck is, you know,
and that
I thought that was a
answer-
good one too.
and that fits in your wheelhouse perfectly. That's like you know, you and Eric Hamilton are probably having a hell of a time at that moment when that was going on.
There's another thing too. I'll throw the sidebar out there because I love talking about this. I've had a theory about the relationship between Anakin and Padme in that film. At the beginning of the movie, she's like, "Oh, Annie, you're like the same kid that I remember from the con."
Right.
And by the end, she's like, "And now I realize that I truly love you." She did not fall in love with him.
Okay.
He's so jacked with Force energy.
He's just making things happen.
He Jedi mind tricked her without realizing it.
Yoink.
It was the same way that where like, you know,
Okay.
if you hold your hand above a candle, it's just going to be slightly warm. But if you keep it there for an hour, your palm is going to cook. It's going to blister and everything else. And I think that's what happened to her. Because by the third movie rolls around, she's almost heavily brainwashed. I can't live without Annie. I'll die. And it's like, this is not the heroine we saw in the first prequel. So
I mean, I think that's a fair observation. I wouldn't say that that's off the mark.
it's no one's ever really taken a crack at it canon wise or whatever. But right now, you know, Disney and Lucasfilm and everything else, that's a podcast for another time to talk about what's going on there. But hey, I love The Mandalorian.
You've dipped your toe into it, so I'm gonna follow up to it here. So what do you think about the whole Project Luminous thing going on at Disney Star Wars world?
The kind of like the new prequel.
Yeah, but I think it's all going to be literary. The whole Project Luminous is all like done through books and comics.
I believe so, but I'm sure if something becomes very fertile, they'll explore doing it. Especially right now that Disney Plus is just going to need a constant flow of inventory. And
I guess because they whacked the majority of the standing canon. So the question lies is that the success of the Marvel films has come off the shoulders of 45-50 years worth of comic book production. So to say, hey, we're getting rid of all our canon and now we're going to start a whole movie ramp up and television network. It seems almost not thinking ahead by going, oh, wait a minute, we now can't use what we spent all that money and time on.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in about 10 years when people have outside eyes and how they talk about Disney's acquisition, and perhaps it was a mistake to put Kathleen Kennedy in charge of it, thinking that because she had been close to it, but really she was a logistics person. She's just kind of proven that she's not really a creative node. And like I said, Kevin Feige is a node. He's the buck. It all flows through him. The buck stops with him. I don't necessarily agree with everything that he's done, but I respect and appreciate the fact that it is with him. Time Warner has not had his equivalent for their DC rollout, which they never had a plan for to begin with. I mean, a lot of people tend to forget when the first Avengers movie was coming out, Time Warner was laughing at them. They were telling the people they report to that, like, why would we put all of our main characters in one movie that'll make $200 million, and when we can put them each in their own movie, make $200 million a piece, and then of course makes a $2 billion overnight, and then about 3 weeks later they announced that gargantuan slate of titles, including Cyborg, which is like, man, Marv Wolfman isn't even a fan of Cyborg, and he's his creator, or at least he's not even enough to that he thinks is worth a movie,
Yeah, I think one of the I mean, my observation, when it came to DC, the two errors I can track with the company. The first being conflating their brand image in the public and in films with Christopher Nolan's talent as a film director.
Yes.
Nobody's going to match up to Christopher Nolan's abilities as a film director in the market. You're just not going to find that. There's not another Christopher Nolan out there, and that's okay. We only need one, just like we need one Steven Spielberg, and we need one Michael Mann. The second big error was DC Comics, being part of Warner, opted to pull their creative team, being the comic book division, in-house into Los Angeles, and they are now a part of the entertainment division of Warner Brothers Film. And I don't think they have to answer to things now that they didn't have to answer to when they were sitting in New York City making comic books. And now that they have to hit sales sequences and pulses and fit in with something and deliver things that need to be, rather than just make comic books. Make comic books, but the film division make films. Not saying that they're separate, but they certainly are. They are not one in the same.
That's very, very, very wise. Yeah, the new 52, as I understand it, was really thrown in because apparently some detached executive at
Someone agrees with you here, by the way, on your force theory.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Sean. Appreciate this. I appreciate your support. Yeah, the new 52 basically started with an executive just basically happened to come across a top-selling list of all comics and noticed that only Batman had been in the top 10.
Right.
And they're like, well, change something and do it. And so they had to throw the new 52 together. And that's another one that I'm waiting at. In about 3 or 4 more years, we'll reach the 10-year mark for it. And it's going to be due for a documentary of, all right, so what really happened behind the scenes? Well, Diane Nilsson called us in and told us we had to flip everything or else. And apparently that also, the new 5G or 5th generation rollout apparently led to changes in DC management quite recently as well.
Right, the ousting of Dan DiDio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious. Listen, we don't know what happens behind closed doors, but the question belies is Jim Lee has a great level of acumen when it comes to comic books and the industry, but he's not a publisher traditionally. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to see what they end up doing and what direction they head, because I have a few ideas of who I think would be really great to fill Dan's role. What do you think?
I think that it's very tricky in that job, because you need somebody that understands how the business sort of operates, but then can also go upstairs to the suits, a word I don't really like to use really, and be able to explain to them why. I will give Jim Lee and Dan DiDio credit for a few years ago. DC decided that they were going to get rid of their participation program, which was their way of doing royalties on characters. And in the old days, publisher Paul Levitz would basically, if a character got used, he would cut somebody a check and we go through. And DC Time Warner had decided that we're just going to just send anybody that we've been sending this random check to. Oh, okay, we use this character, on a lunchbox. Here's $50. We're just going to give them one lump sum payment and tell them thank you. And Jim Lee and Dan Dio apparently went to bat for everybody and said, no, you can't do this. You cannot do this. You just can't. And apparently they won. And, I will always give them credit for that. There's more that they've done that I disagree with and that I agree with. But that is something that I will always give them credit for, so that guys like Jerry Conway can still get a few bucks if they use Power Girl for something. And of course the big joke too is that Len Wein got was it Len Wein? God, who was it? The guy who created Lucius Fox. Yeah, it was Len Wein. Yeah, Len Wein, I believe, created Lucius Fox from Batman. He said he got a bigger check for Lucius Fox being used
in the movie
than he ever has any check from Marvel for being the co-creator of Wolverine. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, as Jack Kirby said, comics will break your hearts, kids.
Yes.
Yep.
And right now, Howard Chaykin's doing a really good job of sort of correlating this in his series, Hey Kids Comics. Doing a great sort of a history following a generation of young guys in the 60s and then getting pulled into things and being just that whole up and down and heartbreak and all that. So, but by the same token, coming back to the Marvel days now, we are living in times where people can create and people can publish, whether maybe not in print, but they can publish online. They can publish on print through, the crowdfunding thing, and they can retain the rights. They may choose to sell those rights later, but we do live in a pretty good time where the fertility is out there. The problem now, the soil is fertile, but we really don't have a lot of good gardeners and farmers as perhaps we may once have had.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting time. I look at the quality level of the artists out there is unbelievably high. It's technology, of course, has done wonders to facilitate that, and not only in just the computer programs available, but through social media. I think the learning curve for visual artists out there is so much quicker than it ever was. You have so many more opportunities to see things that you've never seen before and have people see the things that you've done and get feedback, which wasn't possible 20, 30 years ago. And it's amazing that I don't think it works the same for writers. I think writers are still in a silo that doesn't afford as much interaction as visual artists have.
I would definitely concur with that.
And
it's funny too, because this came up quite a bit in my interview questions during my sketch duels this weekend, which was a lot of people. There was back in the day when the guys that we emulated, like talking about guys like Peter David, John Mark DeMatteis, Christopher Priest, back when he was called James Owsley.
Sure.
There was mentorship in writing this stuff. It's like there's a lot of opportunities being somebody's assistant, being this. I mean, you go to SVA, go to Kubert School, and then you become somebody's assistant for a year, 18 months, and stuff like that. Then you pick up some hands-on, and stuff like that too. There isn't anything like that as far as writing comics anymore. There's no more. Okay, do a 7-page story for the next House of Secrets. We've already got a story in that about a vampire. We've already got a story about a zombie. So do whatever else you want in 7 pages. And they bring in that.
That's a really astute observation. I was able to cut my way through the early years of my business in the industry, because there were short anthology titles being published by all the major publishers.
Yeah.
So I could pick up things from, Marvel had 2 or 3 anthology books running at the same time. One of them happened to be bi-monthly, so arguably that's 2 books in its own right. And, DC had its books, Dark Horse had its books, so you really could try out. I think I have, my early years, I believe my first 3, possibly my first 3 or 4 projects were all written by first-time writers, and one of them being me. But it was a very different time. I think, I don't know. I'm only going off of what I can say.
No, it was. I honestly, you came in on the tail end of that. I think you really did.
Yeah.
Because now there's just no time anymore. I think people writing wise, by the big 2, they're hired because maybe they've made some segue, and right now young adult authors seem to be the latest boom thing, because in the double aughts they tried pulling in TV writers and stuff. The gag was that unless you're listed on Internet Movie Database, no one's going to call you back or whatever. And that really did not work out as well as people thought, with the exception of Jeff Loeb. But people forget that Jeff Loeb was writing comics concurrently with films and all that.
Yeah. And
Jeff Loeb liked it. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic! And you got his eyes right too. and that was something else too that I think is a really big issue, at least as far as the big 2 goes, because you've got fanboys wanting to pitch and beating on the doors like, please give me a chance, just let me just do the thing, it's like walking down Yancey Street at midnight, for 6 pages and just give me a chance. But they're going to these other folks and they're tapping on the shoulder and they're like, we want you to write comics for us. They're like, comics? You want me? Okay. Does it pay? It's like they're pulling in people that I don't think are really interested. They're like, oh, you want to give me a job? Okay, fine.
Sure.
And we're seeing this now with a lot of stuff. If you're coming into an ongoing canon, whether it's in comics or a sci-fi property or whatever, I think you don't have to know it, but at least you have to respect it well enough to double check and say, okay, is this going to jibe up with this? Is this going to make sense with this? And when it doesn't, and you can kind of blow up in your face, and this is where we're starting to get some of the social issues, and I don't want to go into that because
we can jog from that one slightly. But you kind of touched on something that I think was one of the shortcomings for the film industry with comic books, is that we had a long time tradition of film going, well, we know better than those dummies with the staples.
Yes.
And
there was no respect.
No, and if there was respect, those people didn't have enough authority to say anything. So you could say that, boy, I'm blanking on his name. Whoever did the X-Men movies, Bryan Singer. And Bryan Singer may love the X-Men in comic books. He clearly loved Superman, the movie, but I think he didn't have enough authority to say, no, they don't need leather costumes. And, they really didn't have the leverage to say this. And when you get a Kevin Feige who's like, hey, it's going to go this way.
Curiously enough, Bryan Singer was not an X-Men fan. But here's the miraculous thing. He was completely willing to ask. There were numerous times where he would consult the writers, and he would have somebody check in with Marvel. It's like, they literally would say, "Is this okay? Is this something the character would do? Does this jibe?"
Mm-hmm.
So I'll definitely always give him credit for that. That he really yeah, maybe he's almost the miracle in the sense that he didn't walk into it. It's like, yeah, you make comics, I make movies, and because I'm a filmmaker, I understand this better than you guys do. There was none of that typical hubris, or the other side of the equation with that, which all throughout the 80s and 90s, in some interview somewhere, I would always hear the dreaded phrase, well, we're not making it too serious. After all, we're making a comic book movie.
Right, sure.
Like,
Heartbreaking.
it just, yeah. So, and then, yeah, it's, and now it's just gotten to the point where Batman now Batman has come to a point where there is no definitive version, and even DC is willing to let that roll. You know, we've got an R-rated, very violent, very dark Joker movie. Yet I can go into Walmart right now and I'll see a line of Joker prank toys right there with the DC stuff.
Right.
And it's the comic book version of the Joker, but it's still the Joker. It still vaguely has a resemblance to, you know, the R-rated movie that, you know, was been a source of consternation. And personally, I liked it. I'm the first one to admit there isn't a single damn original idea in it, but it's very well made for what it was.
Yeah, I didn't get to see it. It sort of kind of fell in between our movies listings that we go to. So
I wrote a review of it, and basically I'll summarize in that is that everybody wanted it to be like the female Ghostbusters movie and a couple other things leading into it, where it was like, okay, people on both sides of the social political fence were hoping wanted it to be a big gusher. That way they could fill their buckets and use them to fill their blogging political machines or whatever. Like, oh, I gotta fight this for two. To me, it's like it's neither. It fuels neither arguments. It's a movie about an imperfect guy having a whole bunch of imperfect events on the perfect time to break him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's that story about somebody just falls through the cracks, you know, and that's all it is, really.
Yeah. Okay. I have nothing against it. I just haven't gotten around to it.
That is fantastic.
Well, I'm getting there. It's all big question mark.
Because it's right over there, I'll go ahead and get mine.
Yeah, please do. All right, Blake. Well, I agree with you on the Micronauts, Blake. That's the best. And Skippy, you're right. Wolverine is everywhere.
Yes.
There's no denying that. All right, Pat, I'm putting you up on solo layout. Whoa. Wow. Where'd you get that?
From Dean Madier himself.
Wow.
This is from his Prisoner adaptation that he did at DC.
Uh-huh.
When I went to my first... I'm going to go.
Hold on, that might be me. There you go.
Better, yeah. One of my first Dragon Con about 4 or 5 years ago, he was there as a guest. I happened to be actually walking around in my Prisoner cosplay. I walked by his table. He looked at me. I looked at him, and I was just like, "You! I've been wanting to talk to you for 30 years." And then he laughed, and then we laughed. And here's a fun, curious thing: I wasn't a huge fan of this series, but again, he tried. He tried to put some answer to it, or whatever. And I don't hate it. It's not what I would have wanted to see.
Okay.
And I asked, and then we're just talking about it, and he said, and he is a big fan. He didn't just phone it in. He was legitimate. We talked the show and the theory and Port Marion and all that. And then he had a bunch of original art on the table, and he just sort of said, I think I saw some original art from that. And I thought he meant like at home or something.
Okay.
And then we're talking he pulls it out. Jesus.
Yeah, no, he pulls out another portfolio, unzips it, and I'm looking through the pages, and it's the total, the D pages, it's the stuff, whatever. And then I've come across this.
Wow.
Now, This is the money shot of the entire series.
Yeah.
This is the equivalent of Wolverine after they fight the Hellfire Club. When he crawls out of the sewers, you tried your best shot. Now it's my turn.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this equivalent is. I was like, oh my God. Now I don't do original art because that is an expensive ocean that
it's an expensive drug.
Yeah. Mike Broder, owner of GalaxyCon, and my brother from another mother, he's gotten to that. He's done very successful for himself. So now he's original. As a matter of fact, the very first time I went to his office was kind of a test. He was like observing me, seeing which pieces I recognize, and seeing this, and like, this is a reproduction of Iron Man 150. He goes like, how can you tell? So because he's got the fins on there. This is a commission. It's like, yes, it is, and stuff like that. So once in a blue moon, I have some more original art now. He knows I'm a big fan of the DC character Cobra, the goofy guy, and the vigilante, their cowboy version of vigilante. So I've got a few random pages that he's picked up for like $30 or whatever. Here, I got your vigilante page. Like, oh, thank you. So I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, oh God, this. I said, like, I just gotta ask, like, how much would you want for this? Mm-hmm. And Maria just looked at me and goes like, oh, you know what? For you, $100. I was like,
what?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, I was like, Mister, we could do business. I threw the money at him, and thank you, President. His only caveat was, give me your information so that
if it's needed for something in the future.
Exactly, because I think he wanted to do an artist edition of it or something to that effect. So I'm always thinking to myself, I might get a random. We're friends on Facebook now. I might get a random just message from him. So, oh, hey, can you send that page over? And I'm hoping that when you do these things, that you get a copy of the book.
I would hope so too.
Yeah, I don't know how it works when they track down stuff. I have the artist edition of The Dark Knight Returns, and there are pages missing. It says it is represervable size, and I'm thinking to myself, like, did they just not know who owns this page, or are they just being like dicks and they just don't want to send it to the hold of hostage? But yeah, this is impossible. And I've talked over with some of my art collector friends and dealers, and they're like, wait, the shot with him and the razor, he's shaving off the beard. Is like, yeah, you paid how much for that? He goes like, he could have sold that for like at least $5,000, it's like an online auction or whatever. So yeah, this is my one piece. I still need to get the damn thing framed. So
my very small art collection, I got rid of almost all of it because it had just sat in flat files for 25 to 30 years, and I realized I don't even look at this stuff.
Yeah, you've already learned everything you need to learn from it.
I think so. I think that's how it goes. So there you go. So I'm using the phrase here. You like that? Oh wait, you can't see it. There you go. That's what I'm saying.
That's pretty amazing.
That's pretty cool, man. I like the graphics.
Thanks. Do you like having the stripes go over the man of his jacket, Pat?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it could just be straight up without that.
No, it actually works better with the stripes. That's
what we'll do.
It's got a Saul Bass quality to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, being a graphic designer is sort of kind of hard to not do that stuff. So what do you think is going to happen to DC?
Movie wise or comic?
I guess all of the above, because I mean it sounded pretty threatening, the voices from above.
I think let's see, when Diane Nelson was sent to greener pastures, and I heard by all accounts she was a very nice lady. I know I was a harsh critic of her. I really was, and maybe a little too much. I actually started the hashtag Diane Nelson must resign. And every time DC would do something silly, I would post like a Rotten Tomatoes road this, and I would say all I would just say was hashtag Diane Nelson, president of, or I would say Diane Nelson, president of DC Entertainment, must resign. So, and I think what I was hoping was somebody from the DC ranks would be promoted up, but it looks like they keep sending somebody from the corporate level on down. There's a new lady who's overall in charge of the DC brand. But weirdly enough, though, she came on in at a time. She came in right like the week there was the infamous bat penis scene.
Okay.
In that Azzarello book.
Yeah.
Which caused the stink that was not the good kind of stink. There still is such a thing as bad publicity. And that really was one of them, and I kind of think that was the beginning of the end for DiDio. I really do.
Huh. Okay.
I think that sort of led that through, and I don't know. I think the 5G thing is probably going to still go through. I think from what I've heard, the scuttlebutt I've heard is that the deadline for it is supposed to be a rollout in, I think, September, October.
Okay.
And I think they were legitimately trying to not repeat the same mistakes after Crisis on Infinite Earths or the New 52, which is we're doing this big reboot, but we're going to really plan it out thoroughly. George Perez was writing Action Comics, and early on in the New 52, and he asked his editors, "Are Mom and Pa Kent still alive?"
Right.
And this wasn't like at the beginning, issue 1. This was like 6 or 7 issues in, and they did not have an answer for him.
Huh.
They really didn't. It was like, "We'll get back to you," and it was like,
We didn't write that part yet.
Yeah, it's like he's already running around. He's living in Metropolis. Yeah, so I think, and here's the weird bit. When I first heard about 5G, so here we go again. Weirdly enough, when it was explained to me by somebody a little more in the know, I will keep my confidence with them and not reveal their name. But oddly enough, I began to think maybe this isn't so bad, because the premise is this: all of the DC heroes are back, so you've got characters like the Justice Society are being brought back, and the 50. So they're kind of from like 1939 up to now, they're recreating the DC universe and the DC history. So saying, yes, in the late 30s and the 40s there was the Justice Society, except that Wonder Woman was among them, and they're going to say that Wonder Woman was sort of the first and the primary superhero.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which I guess has a little synergy with her cinematic counterpart.
Sure.
And I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And they're gonna say that Bruce Wayne and Superman started their careers in the mid to late 80s, and so the death of Superman was in like 92, I think, when it happened in real time and stuff like that. So 5G means the 5th generation, means taking place now, which means you have legacy characters. So I believe the rumor mill says that Lucius Fox's son will be the modern Batman. I think Connor Kent or John Kent, one of either his clone or his John Kent's son, will be active as the modern Superman, although I think or the 80s so-called original Superman will still be active, but he'll be gray or gray at the temples or whatever. So a lot of people are crying foul in the sense of it's another way to take away legacy characters and put in diversity characters and blah blah blah. But I kind of look at it as, well, if you're giving them their time in the sun and you're saying, no, they had their time, then that's okay. One thing, again, something else too that people don't understand about the psychology of fandom is that we don't need to see our characters all the time. But if you're going to not use them anymore, we do kind of want to know that they rode off in the sunset and had a happy ending, good life.
I think it's a fair thing to want.
Yeah, and I think, like, and if you're gonna bring them back just to kill them off, just so that their baton, pass the baton in their replacement, so that they can look at their body and go, no, whether it's whether it's Captain Kirk falling off a bridge, or or Han Solo getting impaled by his son, and it's just like, guys, I would have been so happy. All he had to say was, 10 years ago, during the really bad times. Just infer that there was some really bad times, and Han, Luke, and Chewie all took off into the Falcon, and they went into the black portal, and they were gone. And only Chewbacca came back. And whatever happened, only Chewbacca has told Leia, and she's accepted it. Just say that they're somewhere on the other side of the galaxy in this wormhole fighting some great evil or something, and someday they might come back. They don't need to come back.
Where were you when they were writing this?
Yeah.
God damn it. I hate you.
I know.
Give me all these hopes.
A new hope?
A new hope.
I honestly had an epiphany a couple of years ago where, I think I've let myself down. Sometimes I think, I should have just gone out to fucking California 20 years ago. I should have just done PA work and clawed my way up. And who knows, maybe I could have worked my way up to some weird point where I could have been involved in one of these things and been the voice in the room and just said, guys, I don't think it would work like this. And I'm not saying it's because I don't want it, but at the very least, I would just say, this is the backlash you're going to get.
Yeah.
Right. And I have a friend of mine, Larry Nemechek. He used to be the editor of the Star Trek Next Generation magazine.
Okay.
And he's a Star Trek expert. And under the original when Bryan Singer was supposed to be the showrunner for Discovery before he got hired, Singer was going to bring him on in to basically be the continuity and canon guru. He was just everything's going to flow through him, and they were going to have him consult. And then they got rid of him, and then Larry never got the call, and that's why we have a lot of things that don't jibe up. And
yeah.
Then now, of course, it's been revealed that it's not allowed to jibe up. It's got to have a 25% difference due to the crazy, weird licensing contract thing that nobody can really quite understand. But the guys over at Midnight's Edge did a pretty good half-hour breakdown of it. I still don't quite understand it, but the way they explained it, I can see the journey. I just don't know why.
Yeah. Listen, it's an entertaining show, is what it is.
I've seen a few episodes because I had to sit with some of the actors and host Q&As with them. And curiously enough, it was right before a very pivotal episode in the first season did. So they would not allow me to take questions from the audience.
Okay.
See, it was those very, very rare times where CBS reached out to the convention and said, your host has to clear his questions through us, and you can't take questions from the audience. And it was the guy who played the doctor.
The blonde guy?
No, the medical doctor, the gay one.
Yeah, well, they both are. But okay, yeah.
But he was his partner, the one that won that.
Yep. The guy from My So-Called Life.
Yeah, Latino guy. And the dude
that's how he wants to be remembered, of course, Pat.
Yeah. he was a very proud Latino guy. He said, "Oh, you live in Orlando? Oh, you know where my parents live." It's like, how could I possibly know that? My parents live around the corner from the Costco and OBT. I said, I know exactly where your parents live.
Oh, we know where that is. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So near Popka, near the APK.
Then it was him and the guy who turned out to be the Klingon in disguise.
Yep. Okay.
And so and already the rumors have been going out. So I privately talked to. I always try to talk to my guests before I go on out, and I was just like, all right, we'll talk about this. And unfortunately, the episode doesn't air till Sunday, so we'll just avoid talking about that. And he sort of looked at me. He's like, yeah, I know. Believe me, I would love to be able to talk about it, but
sure.
But you want to keep your job. It's like, yeah, thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I guess they would like to keep their jobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing about being a Q&A host is that you really that a lot of people don't realize is that you have to protect them.
Well, okay, so Patty, let's get into that for a second. How did you end up in this situation, my man? Because you weren't doing that.
It started at MegaCon, which is the Orlando big convention, back when it was independently owned. And over the years at Disney, a lot of my castmates at Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, a few of them are professional comedians and their night gig. Kevin White, Will Hagen, several other guys that have been really, really good stuff, and just good comedic performers as well.
Was that was that anything to do with that logo I did for you guys years
Absolutely.
ago?
That was it. Yeah, you did the logo, which they're still using.
Okay.
Again, eternally thank you for that.
Yeah.
And what happened was MegaCon sort of reached out to Kevin and said, hey, we'd like to do some like a geek stand-up act. I think that's possible. Like, yeah, sure. So we started doing that on a regular basis, like for a couple of years, and we tried to sort of push it on out, and it still exists. Kevin still runs it. My thing is that I sort of lost my interests, really. But because what I was doing was that I was trying to sell Geeks of Comedy to a convention, and there was a show in Jacksonville called Collective Con, which still is. As a matter of fact, in a few weeks I'll be up there again for this one. And one of the guys in running that one was like, well, I don't think I could use that. I said, like, but I need a guy to host our film retrospectives. We have 2 screenings that weekend. We have a screening of The Crow, and James O'Barr will be doing Q&As for that. And we'll have a screening of Repo, the Genetic Opera, and the guy for that will do it. If you want to do that, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. So I went up to Jacksonville, and it was the first day of the show, and it was the first-time owners. And they were a little besieged at what they had created. And I noticed that there was panels going on, Q&As going on, and nobody really doing it. Finally, I just walked up to the owner, and I was just like, hey, look, Max brought me in to do all this stuff, but I'm not doing anything today. Would you like me to help you with the panels? It was like, yeah. Which ones? All of them? I'm like, okay. So I sat down, I looked at the schedule, and I was like, all right, these are YouTuber guys. They can handle themselves. Here's a voiceover actor. I think I'll sit with him. And I just sort of blind shotted it with no real time to read up on stuff or whatever. And it on the whole, it went over pretty good. And then I suddenly realized, okay, this is kind of interesting. So I just began to sort of poke and prod here. I'd be like, oh, if you want, I'd be more than happy to moderate for you. And I would every once in a while somebody would throw me a bone. MegaCon would say, oh, can you do William Sadler? I'm like, yeah, sure. Or can you do Bill Farmer, the voice of Goofy? And I would do some research, and and I'd always known that I had been discontented at conventions at Q&As because I just felt like, okay, here's the guest who has the first question. There was no – I saw a particularly sour one with Lee Majors where he just came on out by himself. It was completely dejected. And
really?
he just sat there and was like, all right, the way this works is you ask questions and I'll try to answer them. And it was just – and the weird thing, too, is like, here he is, Lee Majors. I just felt like, he needs a swim buddy out there or something to that effect. And then so I just sort of looked on into it. And one of the things I also was doing was just I sort of realized that, okay, these are performers and actors. They don't quite understand the fandom. But I could understand where the fan was coming from. And sometimes I could just say, well, actually DC is working on a series of that right now. So maybe that'll trickle down into this and whatever. And it just... that's sort of how it began. And then I also a few years after that, I got involved with a Doctor Who fan podcast called Mark Who 42, which during the Matt Smith years were still, so the fandom was pretty strong, and I was invited to be a guest on it, and then very quickly I was asked to be a regular and sort of a roving one for it. So that group, we would get pegged to do like a lot of Doctor Who discussion panels, and I began to sort of use my improv background. And something else that I began to notice with discussion panels that I did not like was I would go to a panel and there would be guys sitting at a table up above, and everybody would have airs. Everybody would kind of be austere, and they were like, all right, we're going to go down the top 10, whatever the time. And to me, it just seemed like they were just enjoying 50 minutes of being in a position of power.
Okay.
And lording over whatever information they had. Not all of them, but a lot of the fan panels, ones that is, we like to pitch a panel doing this way too. So I flipped it, and I began to just be out in the audience, and I would just work with people, and I'd do crowd work, and I would be all, hey, about this. And a lot of times I would do things like as a one panel we did, like everything you need to know about classic Doctor Who in 50 minutes or less. And that one was like, I was blisteringly honest. I'm not going to tell you it's awesome. I'm not going to tell you stories I'll tell you stories that are good, stories that are indicative of each individual Doctor. Some that are so bad that they're funny, and some that are so dreadful you never watch it. I'm not saying you need to watch it all. Just if you've tried to get into it, here's a good place to start. And if it doesn't take good, thank you for trying. That's all I ever ask.
Sure.
Because I was trying to be inclusive. I was trying to get this up going. Whenever I do an anonymous panel, which is like a knock of like an Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever, like Boobians Anonymous, I told everybody, okay, look, you guys are the panelists and I'm your audience. So this is how this works. And it's just as simple as saying, hi, I'm Patty and I'm a Whovian, and say something either remarkable or ridiculous or just whatever about why you love the show.
Patty, I love that. I love that idea. That could be like anything.
I do. Yeah, I absolutely do. It's I could do Whovians Anonymous, Trek Anonymous, Star Wars Anonymous, and the idea is that you can say whatever. And some people just say something wispy and goofy, and some people can get really deep and talk about, hey, there was that's cool, man.
Yeah, Gary's working on the latest issue of United Forces.
United Forces.
Yeah, United. It doesn't matter how you wear your hair. It's what's inside your head.
So I began to.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, no problem. So basically, what I've been doing is I've been doing it at two prongs for it. I've been honing my skills as a Q&A host, and I was also trying to take standard convention program offerings, and which have been very static, because most conventions will just do stuff just because other conventions do it, and no one's looked at it from outside the box and say, how can this be improved? Everybody sort of tends to do it. So that's what I try to bring to the table. Two examples. I was given a challenge by GalaxyCon when they were still called SuperCon. They were like, actually, I should probably talk about how I got involved with them. So I was doing that, and then
Florida.
This is Florida, yeah,
Miami,
yeah. And then about 5 years ago now, at this point, I think it was doing some Doctor Who stuff, and then the gal who ran the Doctor Who track asked me to sit with her and co-host, moderate a couple of the Doctor Who actor Q&As. So David Fisher Baker, who played the head in a couple episodes, a wonderful, wonderful old British queen. It's a nice fellow. And then she had me sit with her, Paul McGann, and Eric Roberts. And it went okay. I mean, I look back at it now, I would be so critical of myself, like, oh God, I should have gotten the questions earlier. I should have done this, I should have done that. But it ended up being okay. But the thing is, that's when I first met the owner of the show, and she did not tell him that I was going to be up there. So when I got off, he was afar, and he's a burly man, and he was just staring. He was just fuming, absolutely fuming, or at least he looked that way. And we laugh about it now, but I just walked up to him. I was like, "Hi, you're Mike." Yeah. So I did a little introduction. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, or whatever. And then I have likened him to he's like the equivalent of Mycroft Holmes. He's somebody who just looks at the whole business constantly, absorbs information, never uses it. So after that show, he randomly friended me on Facebook, never really interacted with me, just sort of friended me, and then just sort of watched me from afar. And then several months later, I said, after I said, like, hey, if you're calling for a MegaCon, like, yeah, you want to talk? I'm like, yeah, sure. So right away I saw him. He was just like, so what do you want to do for me? I said, look, I would love to moderate panels for you. And what I would like to do is would like to do the guests that I think are of our generation. Because he had Peter Davison, the Fifth Doctor, but he had a really young Modern Who fangirl hosting him. And so there's a disconnect. She didn't, nothing against her. It's just, she was all about, David Tennant and Matt Smith. And here he is with Peter Davison, who she probably had never seen before. And it just didn't work.
She probably
I didn't
saw
see
Reddit
it.
article.
Yeah, but the whole thing is that way too. So it went from there. So that year at SuperCon was the first time I really went into it balls deep, and I really the first day I got incredibly spoiled. I had some very good ones. I had Denise Crosby from Star Trek, and we hit it off tremendously well. It was I got so spoiled my first time at bat. I really did. She was just with me the whole time. She was just absolutely cool. I went down all the rabbit holes and the crazy stuff. And because I said, all right, let's go back to the beginning. So she thought, all right, we're going to talk about Star Trek. Then we'll talk about Walking Dead. I was like, how did you book that Black Sabbath music video in 1978? And she was like, what? Oh, you little shit. And she said it in a joking sort of way, but it broke the ice. And she loved the fact that I wanted to talk about Eliminators, which was this cheesy direct-to-VHS movie she made where she played the beautiful scientist, and it was a team of it was a role-playing game party. The team was her, a scientist, a cyborg, a ninja, and a mercenary against a mad scientist, and it was just good. But
who else are you going to send against a mad scientist?
Yeah, exactly. And so I went from there, and then I did several other guests, and they went really well. And then Saturday, I got punched in the nose really, 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 really hard. Just when I thought, oh, this is easy. I've got this. I sat with a guest, a prominent Star Trek guest who I did not read correctly. To my credit, later on, I sort of realized, well, his handler should have coached me or whatever. But the whole thing was that it was a dark moment, and I almost got canned. It wasn't terrible. That actor was being a grouch from the get-go. There was something odd going on, and all they had to do was just tell me, just introduce him and walk away completely. Then it would have been fine. And I just thought I was supposed to throw my 2 cents or whatever. So, but that was in the long term though. Since I survived that, that's good, because that taught me humility that I needed that weekend. That taught me, no, you don't understand this. You don't understand this at all.
You said earlier that you like to speak to the people before you guys go up on stage. So Absolutely. That may have been, the seed planted for that behavior later on, because I mean, you could have easily have had that moment and go, well, that's it. Gotten mad at yourself and, mad at the situation and, burned it, ruined it, or just walked away from it. So what made you turn around that one?
I was trapped on stage.
Yeah.
I was behind him. He was at the side of the cage. I had 3 choices in my head. It was like the scene in Terminator when the guy's banging on the door and the Terminator is like mutilating himself. It's like, what do you got, a dead cat in there? And you see the screen go of all of his possible options for, excuse me, beg your pardon. Like, I don't understand. Fuck you,
right.
Asshole. So that was going on in my head. And I was like, okay, I can just get up and leave. But if I do that, it's going to be weird. I could get up and punch this old guy. And that is, of course, is not an option, but it was in my head. So I took a page from politicians in debates when their opponent like calls them out on stuff that's basically true. So I pretended to be so dumb that I didn't understand that he was pissed at me and insulting me. So I was just like, you know, you get in political debates was like, well, you voted for the Patriot Act and everything else, and you caused like all these jobs to fail. And then the guy in the parade is always like, they always had this weird smile, like he's crazy. I don't understand. You know?
Yeah, right.
So I did that and thought I was doomed, but
quick thinking.
And I avoided the boss for the rest of that day. And then he saw me. He's like, Patty, what happened with so and so? I said, like, Mike, I misread him completely. I will apologize to anybody I need to apologize to. I sorry, I got to do this way too. I'm sorry. I mean, I was welling up with tears.
Sure.
And he was just like, he was like patting me on the shoulder. I was like, it's okay, it's okay. So basically, yeah, I struck out with an incredible error, but I had enough afterwards that I was in the system, and he and I were begun to become friends as well too, and we realized that there's a lot of geek sensibilities and culture and everything else that we share. I mean, he will still call me up in the middle of the night or something like that and be like, "Should we relate this?" Yeah, I mean, he's my last like geek out buddy. Where did you see the latest episode of this? Like, yeah, what did you think? Blah 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 blah, whatever. Too, you know.
Well, that's great.
So, so it went on from there, and then I tried to improve it. You know, that I tried to get together real people real quick. And so like, oh, I'd like to do this. That's okay with you. Is there anything off limits? And sometimes people get weirded out at that. You know, LeVar Burton, I could say this. You know, he's like, I do a children's show. Why would anything be off limits? I was just like, because if I don't ask. You know, somebody may say it, I may say it. You know, it's like Tony Todd told me I'll talk about anything except my Jekyll and Hyde movie. I don't talk about that movie. It's like okay.
Well, I think that's a very fair thing for you to do, and clearly, it's worked out because when the acquisition happened, you weren't left, you know, behind. You've become a featured player for them, and you know, and that's.
I'm getting there. I am getting there. I think the big thing about me, and that's one thing that all my clients have said, is I have versatility in the sense that I can do comic book guests, I can do media guests, I can do anime guests, I can do wrestling guests. Sure. I know just enough about all those businesses and stuff too, and that's another thing about it too. I remember the first time I sat with some of the principals from Dragon Ball about a year and a half ago. First time I sat with Chris Sabat, and afterwards he was just like, how is that so good? And I basically said, like, I talk about you and the job. I let the fans ask questions about the character and the canon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what I do. I talk about the person, and I'll talk about gigs. And I like to talk about whatever led up to the early career. I always ask if they're an actor, like, what kind do you understand in acting? You know, it's just, well, my dad wanted me to be a chartered accountant and blah, 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 and whatever and stuff. And it's been interesting. The first time I sat with Barry Bostwick, which was, that was one of my favorite ones of all time, because it was a show in Tucson Comic-Con, which is co-owned by Brian Polito and his wife, and they invited me after seeing me at the other shows and doing a little networking and stuff. So it was like he thought it was going to be the typical thing. I told him too. I said, like, well, if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask you some question about the obscure stuff. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And they sat down. This guy's going to ask me about some things I never heard before. And I said, what can I do instead of acting? He started talking about it, and they turned to the audience and said, do you really want to hear this? And I was like, oh, God, they're going to throw me into the bus because all they want to talk about is Rocky Horror. I said, no, they're interested. And that's what gave me this idea that if the guest is engaged, honestly,
sure,
the audience will be too, as long as you give them the ability to ask their questions. You know, you don't have to jump right into the big thing. And there's one thing that I've definitely learned is that usually whatever they're most passionate about is usually not the main thing they're associated with. So it was interesting with them. So now I look for the moments I call the hook moments, where I catch them and they begin to really trust me, because that's the other thing about this job is that you can look up these actors or wherever. You can look up Q&A, and in the world of the YouTube now, you can find dozens and dozens of these things. And the moderator, which is a term I despise. I know
I'm glad I used it for the show card.
No. It's kind of trust me. I actually lost a client because I said, "Oh, could you introduce me as the host and not the moderator?" We use the term moderator here. It's just okay. Yeah, you also don't take Yankee Dollar, but we don't need to talk about that. Anyway.
Potatoes.
Sometimes my newfangled ways are a little too
fangled.
Yeah, I guess so.
Fangled.
But and then so trust me. And then I was like, I talked about. Yeah, we talked about this. I talked about how he did the voice of the main character on Le Planet Fantastique or Fantastic Planet. He actually did the voice of the main guy who escapes and everything else. If you ever seen that. And then we started talking about his turn in, George Washington, the 80s miniseries and shit like that, And then we started talking about miniseries in general in the 80s and Shogun and stuff. And I said, in Winds of War. And he got real quiet. He was like, I want a Golden Globe for that. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I want to talk about it. And that's when he really clicks like, yeah. I played a submarine captain and I'm all wrong for that. You know why? Because you're too tall. Yeah, I'm 6'3". I'm not submarine height. You're submarine height. He goes like, yeah, I am.
Fucker.
And then it went on for
That's
that.
what we've always said about you, Patty, that you are submarine height.
Yes,
that's on his card now, his business card.
If there's anyone who we need to send to the submarines, it's going to be Patty.
It is. So it's not something that I typically hunt for, but those are the moments that I enjoy.
Yeah,
when I will catch a guest and then they're like, oh wow, that's way too. Casper Van Dien, when I sat with him, he's very proud of the Tarzan movie he made, which I've only seen snippets of, but I do know it was an attempt to really do a Burroughs version of it and version of the character, and he was kind of disregarding me slightly. Just okay, yeah, another guy asked me questions, whatever. I'll never forget this moment where he's like, well, and then just a few years ago, the Edgar Rice Burroughs Society invited me out to be a guest speaker, and I accepted the Dum Dum Award, which is not what you think it is. And then I just looked at him and I said, the Dum Dum Dance. And those who don't know, the Dum Dum Dance is something of the Tarzan novels that literally during the full moon, Tarzan and his gorilla buddies just do a hoop dance around the full moon. Oh, dum 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 dum, whatever, all that stuff. Because in the Burroughs novels, the gorillas kind of talk to each other, talk to him.
Yeah, they're anthropomorphized, and they do have a communication amongst themselves.
Now, here's the really funny. So I said the Dum Dum Dance. He was like, yeah. And I was just like, I got him. And
reel
the rest
him
of the
in.
time, it was really cool, and yeah, it was cool that way too.
So
here's the other caveat I'll add to that. I never read any Burroughs novel.
Okay.
But I did have a few random issues of the 70s Kubert Tarzan comics lying around, and the Dum Dum Dance featured in that one issue that I had.
Well, then you answered my question before I even asked it.
Okay.
Well, there you go. That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. So this is a thing. How many shows do you do a year?
In a perfect world, I think up to this point, maybe I've got about 7 or 8 shows that I have a good enough relationship with that I should. This past weekend was kind of a nail biter for me because it was the first time that I had to choose between my existing clients.
Ooh.
I 3 of them. I had
3.
Yes. Like I said, Elite Beats. This guy Elliot Hansen, who's come up, but he was a Disney DJ and still a Disney DJ for a long time. He started getting in with Reed Pop, doing like DJ stuff for them and stuff. and he began to kind of to the way too. So he's sort of like the guy I subcontract with for Reed Pop, and he had said, "Congratulations, you're going to C2E2." Oh, that's awesome! I looked it up. It's like, oh my god, it's the same weekend as Pensacon in Pensacola, Florida, who I have a good relationship with, and with GalaxyCon, who is the former owner of SuperCon, and has become one of my best friends, and he's my Vince McMahon. He's the Vince McMahon to my Mick Foley or whatever, like the wrestler I want to put myself up to. So it was like, oh boy. And I was like, well, I gotta go to GalaxyCon. But the owner, he basically said, he was like, no, this is me as your friend and your boss. I can spare you. I can spare you the Richmond show. I can. Yeah. I'll need you for the rest of them, but I can spare you the Richmond show. It'll be better for your career. So he, by his graces and everything else, he let me go play in the Reed Pop Sandbox.
Well, so. while you were in Chicago. Oh no!
What happened?
No, Blake was at the Richmond show this past weekend, and he was all set to hang out and everything else, and
you blew him off.
I know, he's all set to tell me, "Hey, I heard Neil Adams is here."
Yeah, that's his thing. He always does that,
but he couldn't say that because Neil was in Chicago.
So were you? Did you text him to say, "Hey, that Neil Adams is here"?
Yeah, buddy. And that really has become, and that's become such a weird thing. Like the Hook moments, it's like I always tell to people, kind of like what I said before about like wrestling and comic book art. This is not something that theoretically that you aspired to do. This is something you kind of fell into.
Sure. And
there's myself, maybe about a half dozen other people that I think were in this sort of thing and a professional standpoint. But lately there's been a lot more people saying like, oh, I want to moderate, I want to do this, I want to do that. And people ask me, and I always tell them, okay, why?
Sure.
Why do you want to do this? And they're like, and I say, it's okay to say because you want to hang out with the celebrity. It's totally okay. Although you would be better served by volunteering to be a handler or something, because you could stay with them the whole weekend. You could take the money, and you're taking their money, and they will, you'll get better with them and tighter with them and all that stuff if that's your aspiration. Because I always tell everybody, and I say like, are you prepared to bet, to risk your adulation for any type of celebrity against the very real possibility that leaving that stage, you'll know that they hate you? Like what happened at that Star Trek thing of mine.
Well, it's got to be a challenge. I mean, because your role sort of straddles, two sides. You have to be a facilitator, but yet you also have to entertain, because there's no guarantee that the people sitting on the stage are there to entertain them as themselves.
Sometimes, basically, it's like a tricycle, and I have to become whatever wheel is needed. And sometimes it is the big wheels. There are some.
Could it be a big wheel instead of a tricycle?
Yeah, you gotta leave the big wheel on it. And
it's because it got the cool power brake.
Yeah, and because sometimes you do have to be perhaps one step ahead of the guest. Most of the time, I just need to be one step behind them. The nice thing, though, is that if they're frantic and crazy, then I can be frantic and crazy too, as long as I'm one step behind them. Then it's okay.
Right, and that's it's not your show.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. And there have been moments when I probably have crossed the line, not for the whole thing. There probably have been times where I've overstepped myself, and I really try to be cognitive of that. But the metaphor I've often used is that's taken me this time to really figure out, and hasn't been just maybe the past 18 months that I've really felt like I've got a lock on my style and my technique and everything else, which is I'm a waiter. The guests that I'm on stage with, or guests, they're the chefs, the audience is the diners, and whoever owns the convention owns the restaurant. Mm-hmm. I have to make everybody happy. but I must be ready to make the restaurant happier than, say, the chefs. So I have to, there have been a few guests where I'm like, no, we gotta go. We gotta done the next thing coming on up, And I've had people get huffy with me. Oh, we'll stay a few more minutes. Like, no, I'm very sorry. We have to go.
They're your bosses, and the audience are the customers. The people on the stage are the least important people in the equation at the end of the day.
I always the people who they say they want to do this, I say, what's the purpose of Q&A panel? And they'll try to get, well, it's to have a moment between the guests and the residents and everything else. I'm like, no. That is an effect. That is a really nice effect. It's so the people who maybe couldn't afford an autograph or whatever can get a moment with them. Again, that's an effect. It's not the purpose. They're like, what's the purpose? The purpose of a Q&A panel is to sell pictures and scribbles. Yeah. It's to sell pictures and scribbles. It's to get those people in that audience in a good enough mood that if they've bought stuff already, that they feel very justified in it.
To go buy more.
They haven't, then maybe they've probably been tipped over to go on by and do it. Or maybe, if it's the way I do it, maybe I mentioned something and somebody's like, and one of the something on the B roll or even the C list in that person's career, and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot he was in that movie. That was my uncle's favorite movie. Like, he watched it all the time on HBO. You know what? I'm gonna go back to the table and have him autograph that from that biker movie or whatever. If I can get that going on, then I feel like that's part of my job.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, the bottom line is it's a promotion. The whole, yes. It is a promotion, hidden as a fan interaction, and
opens different avenues.
Yep.
Now there's a perception from the outside that the job is like a bag boy. As long as you don't put the milk on top of the eggs, it's like a whatever, But internally, though, you're also a lifeguard and a Secret Service agent. Yeah, I have to be the one
for these guys.
What's that?
You're going to take a bullet for these guys?
Yes, I will. When somebody comes on up right when they're done, if it's in a smaller, not a main stage, but a smaller room, and somebody tries to come on up and they try to hose like a free picture. Oh, can I give you a picture real quick? It's my job to say, no. It's my job to say, you'll be able to do that downstairs at their tables, and they'll be back there about 20 minutes.
You're the bad guy.
So
it's my job to say, I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid we are just about at time. This will have to be our last question. Ooh, you suck.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're the heavy
every time.
I am. I tell one of the bit of advice I do tell people is that by all means, watch your panels on YouTube. For God's sakes, do not read the comments. Do not read the comments, because here's the thing. Nobody will ever say anything good about you because they're resentful that it's you up there and not them. And they will cut apart every little thing. I can't believe he mispronounced this. I can't believe he doesn't know about this, or just whatever. Or just, I wish the host would shut the fuck up. And I warned this and said, look, there's not going to hit you. But by all means, look at your forms, see where you did this, and you don't have to be your own harshest critic, because if you want that, read the comments and that'll be that.
Yeah.
But here's the odd thing too, though. To the guest on stage, I am a Secret Service agent, but to the audience, I am a lifeguard. There may be somebody might get very emotional, and that's one thing that we can take for granted, is that somebody's like, their childhood hero is right in front of them, and they're talking to them. It's like, oh my God,
that makes sense.
I can't believe he's here, and I just and I've had people kind of choke, and I've gone out in the audience, and now I do that all the time. Now I come on out, I'll talk to my guests for a few minutes, and then I say, okay, I'd like to invite our audience out for their questions, and I actually, You see the mic stand right there going line up. Now you may notice there's no microphone there. That's because I'm holding it in my hand. I'm going to come on to you. And I'm like, hey, what's your name? What's your question? That way I hold the microphone at all times and I'm in control in case I get somebody gets real weird. But the main thing is I'm there to give them some gentle encouragement if they need it, or gentle deflection if they warrant it. Some guys, a very common thing. And again, too, it's like some people will ask a very improper question, not because they're being a dick, but because they just don't understand that the question is impertinent. I had somebody ask an actor, it's like, so who would you never want to work with and why?
Right.
You know, and it came from a place of innocence. And so so I transpose it. I'm like, tell you what, why don't we flip that and say, who would you love to work with again and why?
Yeah.
You know, and I'll see the actor on stage and they're like, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, no one wants to put their have to put their foot in their mouth. So, or to go like, I can't answer that. So,
I legitimately, whatever love, whatever energy I give to my guests, I really try to give that equally to the audience.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great.
And it's gotten it, and the guests really appreciate it. They're so used to people going on up there thinking, oh boy, and when we're done with this, we're going to be besties now. And I keep saying, that's why I use the metaphor again. It's like, you're not going to become the new best friend, or they want to hog them up and they want to go through things and, okay, fine, I guess we'll go to the audience questions. You know, and it happens. I've seen it. Or they kind of make it like people, sometimes I've seen people will use journalists, and journalists can be very, very dry, and they don't know how to do anything with an audience. Or they'll pull like a local DJ, in which case the DJs are too fast paced and they want to do everything in 7 minutes. So you're on this show and I've never seen it, but tell me about it, your character, whatever, you know? And it's like, you know, I've somebody did a rough count, and you know, over the years at Disney, you know, I performed in front of at least 8 million people, live audiences.
Right. Yeah.
So the point is that I'm not saying I'm an expert, or I'm even saying I'm good at it, but I am proficient at it, and I can be like, okay, this is dealing with an audience and dealing with dynamics and stuff like that, and it's just all about making sure nobody drowns in the pool, even if they deserve it.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I kicked one kid out, but that was a situation where he was just being a deliberate douche, and that had to do with a situation in the anime world that's dying down right now. But you know, short version, a guy sort of got ousted out, and he has a little cult of kids that are like trying to go against the people that went against him and stuff. And the weird thing is, he's even said, don't do this. I'll be fine. I'll be back. And I actually know the guy. I'm actually con buddies with the dude. And yeah, so it's
well, I mean, you know, as you said, I mean, you're sitting in the nexus of fandom, and it's an emotional place for a lot of people.
Very much.
And it's a challenge. It's a privilege in a way that you can help, hopefully, steer people through it in one degree or another. And that's something
I enjoy pleasing.
Yeah,
I really do. It was weird. George Carlin was the same way. And, you know, I read his autobiography several years ago, and I was kind of stunned at just how much he and I just seem to have a lot of the same sensibilities. And yeah, it's just like, and that's always the first thing that I always ask when we're done with the guests. I'm just like, thank you so much. I hope that was pleasurable for you.
Right.
And most of the time they're always like, yeah, man, that's really good. Oh, crumbs. The MacGyver, and guy played MacGyver, the guy who was on Stargate.
Okay. Dean.
Yes. Yeah.
Richard Dean Anderson.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. He said my weird roundabout praise. First time I sat with him, we're backstage. He was waiting for his escort pickup. He's drinking some water, and it was just sort of like
throwing him under the bus right there with hookers.
No. The convention escort.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Or the handlers or whatever. It's
Still sounds shady to me.
Yeah. But he said one of the cooler things to me, which was he's another, like, even by my standards, he was like a tall guy. He's like sipping his water. He's just kind of looking at me. And he takes a swig. He looks at me again, and he's like, "You're not like the others." And he meant that in a very, very good way, because it's, again, and I'm not trying to say that all other people don't get it as is, but again, for those same reasons, when I get up to bat with these people, I'm already at strike two, because they've done so many of these things, and they've done it with people that, either want to hog them, or they only know them for the one thing. They only know them for Stargate. They only know them from Star Trek. They only know them as the character. They don't really know them as a person. And anybody can read a Wikipedia. Anybody can read an IMDb. And again, this kind of falls back into my crazy, just years and years and years of just reading this stuff and watching this stuff. It's
nobody can spend tens of thousands of hours doing useless stuff like you.
Exactly. And I finally found a place where it could be of some minor use. I'll be compiling a dossier on people, which is what I always do. And I'll look at the IMDb. I'm like, okay, I've never seen this movie, but it's on there. Let me just click that, see what it is. Okay. All right, who is this director? Why does this director sound so familiar? I'll click that director. And then that director, this director did a movie with this other guy that I sat with a couple of years ago. And I mentioned that movie, and the guy was, that director was insane. He did this and blah, blah. All right, you know what? Maybe I'll backtrack it all the way out. Like, you made movie X with director Y. I've heard some stories about him. Do you have any? Like, oh my God, I've never told a story before. That guy, and I loved hearing that. I've never told this story before.
Well, you're sort of doing the job of a show producer, as well as a host.
Yeah, very
pretty good, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
listen, I think when you say that you found the thing that you can utilize all these skill sets or talents or whatever you want to call them, and put them to productive use. I for one am happy. I mean, there's, we are all happy that you're doing it. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's funny because I'm not at Disney right now. The door is open for me to go on back. There's just no opportunities acting wise right now. But I was like, well, I'll go get a so-called real day job or whatever. But I told people close to me, it's like, this is the first time in my life where I've come across something that I genuinely love and I think I'm good at. And
I would agree.
I was just never give me away too. Sean, ever get to hang out with the panelists after you're in them after con hours? Yes. Kind of the exception to the rule. I'll tell you what, I got a couple of stories about that. I got to pee real quick. Give me about 30 seconds.
All right. So while he's doing his thing, Sean, we're gonna show. So Sean shared some of his work with us this week.
Ooh.
And we're going to.
Let's see it.
In here. There it is. You see that, Gary?
Oh, yeah. Was that Yojimbo?
Yep, and Bucky O'Hare.
All right. Look at that samurai stuff going on.
Yeah, the solid stuff. The rabbits are afoot. Sean, you could have them go head to head and battle directly with the rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Who could win that fight? So, but Sean, we appreciate you sending that in, and I hope you got a little bit of something from our feedback. It's great. I really hope you do proceed forward with
good detail,
chasing your story. Yeah, the detail's great. I think you work on texture is really important, and I think you should really keep leaning in that direction. And it's good stuff, man. I hope you keep it up and keep us surprised. And if you ever have anything else you want to share with us, we'd be happy to take a look at it. And that goes for anybody out there who's working on a project. Please feel free to email that. The details are, I think they're on the Instagram homepage or whatever that thing is called, bio. So you can email it to us there, and we'll get some feedback to you. Thank you, definitely. Oh, well, thank you, Sean. We appreciate it. And
man.
We appreciate you having questions and being an active participant. So, okay, quick, Pat, let's hear these stories, and then we'll have to wrap it up after that. Okay?
No problem. Yes, I have become con buddies with some people, but really, the metaphor still holds in the sense that I say I'm a waiter, because usually the best I can hope for is if I see them again, that they'll be delighted to see me in a green room, and like walking into a restaurant, it's like, oh, is Patty working tonight? We would love to sit in his section.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful that I've had many celebrities I've sat with, had good experiences with, and they see me, hey, how you doing? Blah blah blah. It was like, are you doing my Q&A? You know, and legitimate disappointment when I tell them no. It's like, no, yeah, they're like, yeah, and that lets me know that I'm doing my job. But there have been exceptions. Again, I've not become besties with anyone. Now,
no, that's no.
there is one other thing about this too, is that I am an in-betweener. It's kind of weird. There have been situations where I have gone out and kind of like partied with them as this too, but I'm not one of them. I'm just allowed to tag along. And I said this. There's a good buddy of mine. His name is Alexei. He runs Bard's Towers Books. He's the guy at the conventions that has lots of fantasy sci-fi authors all in a big, huge square, and they're building energy and stuff. And I'm just like, you and I are literally in the twilight gray area of this, because I've said, like, I pointed to a bunch of people at the bar, pros of actors, whatever. I'm like, because we're not one of them. And I pointed over to a bunch of the fans too, but we're no longer one of them either.
Right.
It's like we're really in this in between spot, and I don't. Yeah, it's not like, oh, I get invited to the party, or get invited to this, or everything else too. I mean, yes, it has happened, but yeah, no, it's not as common as that people hope to be. Again, going into this thinking, oh wow, I'll be their best friend, and we'll hang out, and we'll do all this. No. If I'm tickled if they remember my face, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, we said that a few months ago. What is this? And if they know my name, and once on Blue Moon, yes, I've gotten a Facebook request or whatever too. Yeah. Jason David Frank, it's like, and I have become
that's a Power Ranger, right?
Yeah, he's like,
look at me.
Well, he's like he's the Tom Baker of the Power Rangers. He's arguably the most visible and popular out of all of them. And I think at last count, there have been like 87 of them or some ungodly number like that. But they've all been very cool, except for one, and I won't say that guy's name.
Okay.
Don't say that guy's name.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been that way too. But I will say this much though. Celebrities are one thing. Celebrities are cool. But again, at the end of the day, I'm still a comic book kid.
Sure.
And much the same way that you got tight with Golden, one of the nicest moments happened a few months ago at a show. Peter David was at his table, and he was talking to John Mark DeMatteis. And I become friends with the David. I've actually become friends with his wife. I look at her as she's kind of like a big sister to me. And of course, David's like, hey, Patty, how you doing? Whatever. And John Mark DeMatteis, the writer, was there too, who I've sat with for a couple times, and we really hit it up. And I walked up to the table, and Peter was just talking like, oh, hey, Patty, like, John, do you know Patty? And looked at me, and was like, of course. Like, like a little thing like way too. And one of I hope to God he doesn't hear about this, but which is one of the.
Don't worry, we'll cut this out.
Yeah. When Howard Chaykin sent me a friend request,
yeah,
I was like, I had a Beatles getting off the plane at LaGuardia, sort of moment.
Awesome.
And
wait a minute, we're not cutting that part out.
Oh yeah. But the nice thing is though is that I passed the test. I've sat down, I've dined with him, I've held my own with him. And
sure.
Yeah, and he does not suffer fools gladly.
He's a great creator, and an engaging mind. So I think
very much so, and
well dressed.
Yes, very much. Although lately he's eased up a bit. Although that was one of the things like you're a snappy trapper. I like this way too. Because
all right, there's one last question, Patty.
Lay it on me. Someone you've always wanted to interview, alive or dead?
Well, come on, let's be realistic. Dead.
I was just talking about this a couple of nights ago to a young lady that was in Stanley's organization back when he was around. I've always wanted to. I said I wanted to sit down with Stan, but I never wanted to talk to him about the Silver Age. I wanted to talk to Stan about the Hollywood years, about when he left Marvel, went out to Hollywood in the early '70s, and went around peddling superheroes.
Yep.
To Hollywood, and to anybody that would listen, I would been fascinated to hear about that stuff.
Yeah, that'd be a good story.
Yeah, I'm actually developing a an interview talk show or a podcast, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be called Anything But That, and it's an evolution out of my style, which is literally I will talk to celebrities about their entire career, except the one thing they're most identified with.
All right, I think that's an interesting concept for the show. I like it.
Yeah, but the nice thing is, again, like I said earlier before, a lot of times their favorite thing is not the thing they're most identified with, and also it frees them from the obligation.
Yes.
William Shatner will never be able to sit down and if you can ask William Shatner 3 questions, the third question will always be about Star Trek until
he wants to talk about Tech War,
exactly, whatever,
right. Sure.
So, but giving them that emancipation is someone would do it too.
I agree. I'll answer the other half of that question, Sean, for Patty. The living person that he most would like to interview would be Philavelli. So there you go.
Where is Phil?
Phil is doing important things right now.
That's why he's not here.
Let me throw 2 other things out real quick. We didn't get to talk about the sketch duels, but I will say this much: there are 2 things I've done over the years.
Patty, you could send a couple of those to me, and I will put them up on the Instagram so people can see them.
Okay, well, yeah, I can send the pictures away too. Yeah. The way I do sketch duels is called Mr. Rule Sketch Duel. Basically, I take the artist side in sketch duels. I add an improv element to it, and I'm like, okay, so give me some Marvel characters, and people will spit out a bunch of them. But I'm listening for the ones that I know are easy to draw. Yeah, I'm listening for somebody says Silver Surfer. Oh, I like Silver Surfer, and then let's go from here. Let's go from there. And yeah, like I said, Amanda Cotter, who I sat with this weekend, just gave me a big old hug, and she was just like, "You're really good at picking the characters." Because same way before, people were like, "Okay, do the cover of Crisis on Infinite Earths #7 in its entirety in the next 25 minutes and go."
No, that's true. Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm very proud of is GalaxyCon, then SuperCon said, "Look, we want to do a voice actor script reading," which is a very common thing that's been going on for a while. Which is, okay, we're gonna have some voice actors who are sit down and they're gonna read Lord of the Rings, or they're going to read the script to Ghostbusters, in its entirety, and they read the characters and the cartoon voices and from their repertoire and whatever. And they were told, and I found out very quickly that voice actors hate it.
Sure,
voice actors hate doing it. Same thing with sketch duels; they hate doing it. They'll do it because it's part of the deal for getting a free table for your hotel, whatever. So how can I make it better? How can I make it more immersive? So instead of just reading one ponderous script, which gets boring after a while, and usually whoever's running it tells them, and read it in the voice of this, read it in the voice of this character. I turned it into a game show, and the game show is called Steal That Voice. And the premise is I have a Jeopardy type board with 4 hidden scenes. Just individual scenes from stuff that most people have seen. I invite somebody to okay, scene. And I had these little clues, it's like, next time just invite the bitch, okay? It's over too. And then it's like, let's take next time just invite the bitch. And that is, the scene from Disney's Sleeping Beauty where Maleficent appears and she's irate, she has not been invited, and she curses Princess Zara. So I give all the actors a character. But I told them ahead of time, it's like, I'll give you a character to read out of the script, but we're doing just this scene. That's it. 5 to 7 pages.
Mm-hmm.
You do any voice you want. I'm not going to tell you what to do because I don't know what you got waiting for you Monday when you go back to your day job, and I know there's certain voices that some people can't do and whatever. And then the person that picks something, I give them a character. I bring them up to the stage. They read with the actors and they get to be part of it. So, and that's done very well. So that's something else that I peddle to try to be all like, hey, I could do Mr. Roll Sketch Duel and I could do this, I could do that.
Well, that's
what makes me.
There's a lot of cons out there, and if you can, you've got a product and you can sell this product to people, then you have more weekends to go.
And that's what it is. It's all about diversification. There's a lot of people that are hosts, but that's all they can do. They can host Q&As. I can MC a costume contest, and I have shtick that I do with the audience. Or I tell people too, if your inventory is light, I can beef it up. It's just like, may I look at your schedule? It's like, okay, it's a lot of anime stuff and cosplay stuff. I can do a Doctor Who thing for you. I can do a straight up comic one for you. And that's where I come in. I don't like to say a consultant, but I'm just like, I love to partner up with you and help flesh out your schedule. And that's what I do. I get tapped for a lot of stuff. At GalaxyCon, I get tapped for a lot of stuff, after hours, late night programming. My dream panel for that is I've always wanted to do a retrospective of all the porn parodies of products going all the way back to like Sex Trek in like 1972.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, the flip bones and show stills with the like the things all act out or whatever, and just do like a goofy review. It's silly stuff like that. So I to sum things up, I'm a middle-aged man trying to do one last desperate attempt to make a living out of his hobby.
That's what we're doing.
I think it's brilliant. It's brilliant, and I love
awesome.
it. Yeah. So where will you be next, Patty?
I will be at Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle in about a week and a half.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that's about it. I have not gotten my assignments for that yet. It'll probably be a lot of the same level. They have like A-listers up there, but I don't think I'll be doing main stage, but I just don't know. But whatever I do, I'll be glad to. That's an interesting show. I was there about 4 years ago, and I'm tickled pink that Reed Pop owns both New York Comic Con and that one, because it's definitely New York Comic Con still has that. You still see guys going around cosplaying as the Punisher and Lobo and Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe and badasses. And at Emerald City Comic Con, you see Hello Kitty. And look at it this way. Instead of a prop check for weapons, a weapons check station, they have a peace bonding station.
Okay.
So that's just kind of what it is. And I joke.
It's a well loved show. I know plenty of my former peers who love that show to death. So that
is a very art centric show. That was one thing that I noticed particularly about C2E2 as well, was that it was very meat and potatoes. It was the most comic book favorable of all the Repop shows. Not to say that New York like ignores it or any of those too.
No. I know what you mean. I mean, I think I think there's a lot of love for the Heroes Con because it very much attends to the artists, and I think it's about comic books there.
I have yet to go to Heroes Con.
Well,
I think that's probably the biggest one that I haven't gone to yet. But yeah, that's the. I've always heard that is the true last comic books. Mm-hmm. And that's it. You'll see people in costumes or whatever, but you're not gonna see.
It's not a floor show. It's not a floor show, and it's pretty nice. And I can go there for a weekend, not even being in the business, and I can spend the weekend sitting at 20 different tables with people who I've known for the last 30 years and have a great time. So it's a wonderful place to be. So, but Patty, I'm really glad that you were able to make it here. I'm glad that you had a great Chicago show. And
I'm glad I had a good time in Chicago. I would have hated to shit the bed and be all,
well, then it might have been a better show for us then. I really appreciate you coming by. To all the people who are watching and may potentially watch this, I'm going to say it: click like and subscribe.
Squeeze, pinch, and poke.
My contract says I have to say this stuff. So, and for anybody who is working on a project out there, once again, you can send an image of your work and a description to drawdrinking@gmail.com, and we will take a look at it, review it, and put it up on Instagram and talk about it. Everything good with you, Gary?
Yeah, man.
All right.
Gary and I are going to be working on a little something here in Central Florida.
Oh, he's going to talk about it, huh?
I don't know how much you've talked about it. I'm just saying we've been talking.
You can talk about it. I want to hear more about it.
It's your thing, bro. Well, when we complete it, we'll come back and we'll talk about it. How's that?
Yeah, I asked Pat
I'm
if he would.
not talking about things until they're.
Well,
done.
we can give him a little teaser and say that I asked Pat to be an actor in the next Vedika video.
Oh, fantastic!
And we're going to have a meeting sometime this week and talk a little bit more about the script.
Okay.
Because what I wrote could be made better.
Everything can be made better, right?
Right.
But the trick is, I got to make it more like you, my friend. That's the thing. It's like I got to put myself into a Gary Duffner like frame of mind, which is.
Good luck.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're an actor.
I've been listening to a lot of Anthrax and Megadeth and metal on vinyl, and I think I'll be ready when it rolls around.
Yeah, don't forget to watch a little Powerpuff Girls, and you'll find that sweet spot.
The new one right now is Poppy.
Okay.
Have you heard of Poppy? She's crossed over from like alternative to like this alternative / metal. And she's looking frightening and stuff. And
okay,
just look up what used to be That Poppy. Now she's just Poppy, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, just look that up.
All right.
It's interesting.
I'm gonna say I'll send you as large of a version of this file as I can of the prisoner, so you can have it.
Cool. Thank you.
And folks, thanks for tuning in. Gary, I'll see you next week. Patty, we'll probably see you sometime in the near future. All right.
I absolutely hope so.
Let's have Pat on again.
Thanks for having me on, folks. Sorry, like I said to my wife after this, I am a fatuous gas bag, and don't worry, a real artist will be here next time. So
fair enough. All right. Until next time, everyone, take care.
Let's do it.
All right. Yeah, we need a tagline at the end. Let's do it.
You're supposed to play the outro.
I'm not playing the outro.
Why don't you play the outro?
I'm not going to play the outro.
Why don't you play the outro?
I don't know. All right, we're going.
Why doesn't he do it?
All right.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, guys.